Welcome to today's webinar on the evolving world of building control. My name is Joshua Davies, and I'm the Technical Manager here at Socotec Building Control. As a Class 3H Specialist Building Inspector, I'm permitted to work on buildings of any height and complexity. I have gained skills and experience during my career in building control, and I've worked on projects in various sectors. During this webinar, we'll explore how the building control landscape has fundamentally changed since the Grenfell tragedy in 2017, and more importantly, how you as duty holders can proactively demonstrate compliance to ensure the best outcomes for your projects. While much of the public discussion has focused on higher risk buildings, today we'll primarily concentrate on non-HRB projects, where significant changes have also occurred that affect your day-to-day operations and responsibilities. Before we delve into the changes in building control legislation, I'd like to introduce Socotec and provide some context about the business and the breadth of services Socotec offer. Socotec is a global leader in testing, inspection and certification, known as TIC services. Here in the UK, Socotec provides a comprehensive range of technical services across the built environment, offering building risk and compliance services, infrastructure solutions covering road, rail, maritime and energy projects, health and safety coordination, and extensive technical inspection and consultancy services. This breadth of expertise positions Socotec uniquely to support clients throughout the entire life cycle of their assets, from design and pre-construction phases through to operation and decommissioning. At Socotec Building Control, we provide a comprehensive regulatory building control function across England and Wales, working with clients, designers, contractors and developers, providing oversight on projects of all scales, from small domestic renovations to large-scale commercial and residential developments. We also provide additional services, working as part of the multidisciplinary teams with the Building Safety Regulator, and in other sectors such as the Ministry of Defence and Ministry of Justice, reaching beyond England and Wales into Scotland. Our team of dedicated professionals operate nationwide, bringing extensive expertise and a risk-based approach to building control oversight. Here's what we'll cover today. We'll begin by understanding why Grenfell triggered such profound change, then move through the key legislative developments and the current regulatory framework. We'll examine the various roles within the new system, focusing solely on non-HRB projects. We'll then discuss the fundamental shift in building control's role and the new registration requirements for building control professionals. Finally, we'll focus on practical guidance for effective engagement and how you can proactively demonstrate compliance. We'll conclude with a live Q&A. The Grenfell Tower tragedy on the 14th of June 2017, which claimed 72 lives, exposed fundamental failings in our building safety system. Dame Judith Hackett's independent review, published in May 2018, concluded that the system was not fit for purpose. Her report identified a fragmented regulatory landscape, insufficient oversight, a race to the bottom on building standards, inadequate competence across the industry, and worryingly, a culture where non-compliance had become normalised. These findings necessitated nothing less than a complete overhaul of the building control system. While the focus has naturally been on high-rise residential buildings, the review's findings had implications for all building types, and the legislative response has affected projects across the board. The industry has seen significant change to legislation over the past few years. So let's take a look now at some of the key changes impacting the industry. We will start by looking at the timeline of change. Following the 2018 Hackett Review, the government introduced the Building Safety Bill in 2020. The Fire Safety Act 2021 clarified and strengthened provisions under the regulatory reform Fire Safety Order 2005. The landmark Building Safety Act 2022 received royal assent in April of 2022, creating the legal framework for the new regime. From 2023 and into 2025, Extensive secondary legislation was introduced to operationalise these changes. In 2024, the Registered Building Control Approver Regulations 24 came into force, fundamentally changing how private sector building control operates. Throughout 2025, we saw major implementation and significant remediation programs for unsafe cladding. Most recently, on the 27th of January 2026, the Building Safety Regulator became an independent statutory body, moving from its previous position within the Health and Safety Executive. This represents a significant step towards establishing a unified construction regulator. The Building Safety Act 2022 is the cornerstone of the new regime. While it introduced the specific higher risk building requirements such as the gateway system, mandatory occurrence reporting for safety issues, and mandatory digital record keeping known as the Golden Thread, it also brought changes affecting all building work. These include enhanced competence requirements across all building projects, and importantly, extended limitation periods for building defects, which now allow action to be taken up to 30 years for personal injury claims and 15 years for other defects. A fundamental change is the registration of building control professionals, both registered building control approvers and registered building inspectors, which we'll explore in detail later. Simultaneously, the Building Regulations 2010 have been progressively amended by the Building Safety Act to include defined roles and competence requirements with greater enforcement opportunities for building control. In addition, since 2017, the industry has received updated approved documents bringing stricter fire safety requirements, improved energy efficiency standards, and other new or revised requirements in Schedule 1 of the Building Regulations 2010. Understanding the legislative hierarchy is crucial for compliance. At the top, we have primary legislation, Acts of Parliament. The Building Act, now amended by the Building Safety Act, provides the overarching legal framework. Other examples include the Fire Safety Act, which addresses fire safety in occupied buildings, and the Equality Act, which aims to protect people against discrimination based on protected characteristics. Secondary legislation sits beneath this. The building regulations, which have been amended multiple times, set out the technical standards relating to building work and procedural regulations to be followed specifically for local authorities, whilst the registered building control approver regulations govern private approved bodies who carry out building control services and how they must operate, with other supplementary regulations such as the Building Restricted Activities and Functions Regulations expanding on measures introduced by the Building Safety Act. For HRB specifically, the Building Higher Risk Buildings Procedures Regulations detail the gateway process and other procedural requirements for buildings of this type. Finally, we have guidance documents. The approved documents provide statutory approved guidance on meeting regulatory requirements. And though they're not the only way to demonstrate compliance, they are seen as the technical benchmark to demonstrate compliance with functional requirements, supported by relevant British standards which are signposted as part of the approved guidance. The Building Safety Regulator issues its own guidance and codes of practice, and industry has developed competence frameworks to support practitioners and other similar guidance documents. A significant change brought in by the new legislation is regarding roles of those working within the construction industry and their responsibilities in relation to projects. Let's now spend some time reviewing these roles and responsibilities. The Building Safety Regulator represents one of the most significant innovations in the new system. Initially established within the Health and Safety Executive in 2022, as of 27th of January 2026, it has moved to become an arm's-length body under the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. For higher risk buildings, the BSR has direct oversight through the Gateway Approval System. However, its role extends far beyond HRBs. The BSR oversees all building control bodies, both local authority and registered building control approvers. It registers and regulates building control professionals, sets performance standards, and holds enforcement powers. For non-HRB projects, which is our focus today, the BSR's oversight is indirect, but nonetheless significant. It monitors the performance of building control bodies and has intervention powers where serious compliance failures are identified. This means that even on non-HRB projects, building control decisions are now subject to greater scrutiny and accountability than ever before. Now we move into the specific requirements for non-HRB projects, which will form the focus of the remainder of this webinar. The concept of duty holders is central to the new regime, and it's essential to understand who these parties are and what their roles entail. For non-HRB projects, the key duty holders under the building regulations are the client, who commissions the work, the principal designer for building regulations purposes, and the principal contractor for building regulations purposes. And as part of the building control process, these key duty holders are expected to make statements about the works and to confirm their specific duties have been undertaken. In addition, any individual designers who may work under the principal designer and any individual contractors who may work under the principal contractor now have defined responsibilities as part of the building regulations. It's crucial to understand that the principal designer and principal contractor roles under the building regulations are distinct from the similar named roles under the CDM regulations. Whilst the same organisation may hold both roles, the responsibilities are different and serve different purposes. We'll explore this distinction in detail. The underlying principle applies across all projects. Those who create risk must manage them. Understanding your specific duty holder role and its associated responsibilities is fundamental to achieving compliance and owning responsibility. Let's focus on the client's role in non-HRB projects, as this often determines project success. As outlined in legislation, clients must ensure adequate time and resources are allocated for compliance. This isn't something that can be value engineered away, given that it is their legal duty. Clients must appoint competent duty holders, including the principal designer and principal contractor, in order to satisfy the legislation, and information regarding duty holders will be required to complete the building control process. Critically, clients must ensure building control is appointed at a suitable point in the project, ideally before design work is concluded and certainly in advance of work starting on site. This timely appointment is essential because building control's role is to oversee the process and should not be seen simply to rubber stamp completed designs. Clients must ensure coordination between all parties. Building projects may involve multiple specialists, and someone must ensure they are all working towards the same compliant outcome. Clients must maintain oversight of building control compliance throughout the project, not just at the end. Documentation must be retained and should generally follow the golden thread principle to ensure the information can be used effectively to inform future development. Finally, clients must make suitable arrangements for managing changes, which are inevitable on most projects. The key question every client should ask is, do I have the right people doing the right things at the right time? If you can't confidently answer yes, you have a compliance risk. It should be noted that on domestic projects, where the client is carrying out the works for their own personal interest and not in the furtherance of business, such as property developers, some of their responsibilities can be transferred to their principal contractor or principal designer. The responsibility that can be transferred relates to making arrangements, but this does not mean that the domestic client can become detached from the process, as they are still required to provide information and to cooperate with others working on the project. The principal designer role under the building regulations is often confused with the CDM principal designer. So let's be clear about the distinction. These are separate roles with different purposes, though the same organisation may hold both appointments. The Building Regulations Principal Designer has overall coordination responsibility for design work to ensure building regulations compliance. They must ensure that all designers working under their control produce designs that comply with building regulations. They must identify and manage building safety risks and ensure compliance throughout the design phase, considering risks to future building users to ensure the building complies with all relevant requirements. The principal designer must cooperate and coordinate with the principal contractor to ensure buildability and compliance. They must provide information to building control and other duty holders as required, and maintain comprehensive design documentation. The key distinction is focus. The Building Regulations Principal Designer focuses on building regulations compliance and building safety, ensuring the completed building will be safe for its intended users. The CDM Principal Designer focuses on the health and safety during the pre-construction phase of the project. Both roles are important. Both are legal requirements, but they serve different purposes and must not be seen as one and the same. Similar to the PD role, the principal contractor role under the building regulations is distinct from the CDM principal contractor. Again, the same organisation may hold both appointments, but the responsibilities differ. The building regulations principal contractor has overall coordination responsibility for construction work to ensure building regulations compliance. They must ensure that all contractors and subcontractors working under their control execute work in accordance with approved plans and specifications and comply with building regulations. The principal contractor must manage building safety risks during construction, ensuring that what's being built will be safe for future users. They must cooperate and coordinate with the principal designer, particularly when site conditions or buildability issues require design modifications. Crucially, the principal contractor must liaise with building control regarding inspections and compliance verification. They must facilitate inspections, provide information, and ensure work is available for inspection at the appropriate stages. They must maintain as-built records and documentation, capturing any departures from the approved design. The distinction mirrors that for principal designers. The Building Regulations Principal Contractor focuses on building regulations compliance and building safety for future users. The CDM Principal Contractor focuses on health and safety during the construction phase of the project. To repeat, both roles are essential. Both are legal requirements, but they address different aspects of construction safety. Individual designers work alongside or under the coordination of the principal designer. The definition of designer is broad. It's anyone who prepares or modifies designs, or specifies materials, products, or systems. This includes architects, engineers, specialist subcontractors, and even contractors who make design decisions. Individual designers must design to comply with building regulations from the outset. They must identify and manage building safety risks within their area of design responsibility. They must cooperate with the principal designer, providing information and responding to queries. Designers must provide adequate information for construction and for future use and maintenance of the building. They must avoid specifying products or materials that are inadequate or potentially unsafe. The onus is on the designer to verify suitability, not simply rely on manufacturer claims. Crucially, designers must work within their competence, recognizing the limits of their knowledge and bringing in specialist input where needed. The distinction between individual designers and the principal designer is important. Individual designers are responsible for their specific design contributions and must ensure these comply. The principal designer has the overarching coordination role to ensure all design elements work together compliantly. Individual contractors work alongside or under the coordination of the principal contractor. Their responsibilities on non-HRB projects are significant and have been enhanced under the new regime. Contractors must execute work in accordance with approved plans and specifications. Variations must be properly managed and approved. They must ensure workers and subcontractors are competent for their tasks through verification, not assumption. Contractors must follow building control inspection requirements, ensuring inspections occur at the right stages before covering up work. Contractors must report any safety concerns immediately, even if they're not responsible for the issue. Site records and as-built information must be maintained accurately. Contractors must cooperate fully with building control inspections, providing access and information as required. Critically, contractors now have a positive duty to challenge non-compliant designs before construction. Simply following instructions is not a suitable defence if the work doesn't comply, and there was an opportunity to flag the issue. Contractors must work within their competence, recognising when specialist input is needed. The principle of the right to stop means contractors must not proceed with work they know or suspect to be non-compliant, even if instructed to do so. The distinction between individual contractors and the principal contractor is that individual contractors are responsible for their specific work packages. The principal contractor has the overarching coordination role to ensure all construction work comes together compliantly. Before we talk about competence, can I make this absolutely clear? Ensuring competence is the responsibility of duty holders, not building control. Clients must ensure the competence of everyone they appoint. In essence, the principal designer and principal contractor. The principal designer must ensure the competence of designers working under their coordination. And the principal contractor must ensure the competence of contractors and specialists undertaking the work. Building control's role is not to routinely assess or verify competence of duty holders. That's not what the risk-based approach is about. However, where it becomes apparent that competence is not evident, perhaps through poor quality submissions, fundamental misunderstandings of requirements, repeated errors, or the inability to demonstrate compliance adequately, this will form part of the necessary risk assessment building control are expected to undertake. If there is an apparent lack of competence identified, building control must respond through heightened scrutiny because incompetent work presents higher risk. This isn't building control overstepping its remit, it's applying the risk-based approach appropriately. The solution is not to challenge building control's assessment, but to address the issue that led to competence being in doubt. It's important to understand that competence isn't just technical ability. The industry recognizes that competence equals suitable knowledge, plus necessary skills, plus relevant experience, plus appropriate behavior. Someone might have excellent technical knowledge, but if they don't have the necessary skill to apply it, or lack experience with specific building types, this may result in them not being competent for that role. There is a legal requirement, given that it's set out in the regulations, that duty holders should refuse to carry out work they do not consider themselves competent for, and ignoring this could have significant implications for the duty holders and the project. Duty holders must take competence seriously, verify it, and not simply assume it. This protects everyone, the building owner, future building users, and the duty holders themselves. A fundamental shift in the new regime relates to the evolving role of building control, and understanding it is critical for all duty holders. Building control's role has evolved from approval to oversight. Previously, building control was expected to approve designs and plans, conduct inspections at key stages, advise designers and contractors on how to comply with the regulations, provide or assist with solutions to compliance problems, and issue completion certificates by set deadlines. Essentially, building control was seen as the source of compliance solutions. The new regime represents a fundamental shift. Building control now oversees the design and construction process, applying a risk-based approach to verification. The critical change is this: duty holders are now expected to proactively demonstrate compliance. Building control's role is to verify that this demonstration is adequate, not to create the demonstration itself or to fill in gaps. Where compliance is not demonstrated, or where the demonstration is inadequate, building control should intervene. But the starting point is that duty holders must show they comply, not ask building control how to comply, or to reassure duty holders their work does comply. This shift reflects the Hackett's Review finding that the previous system created a culture of dependency, where those in the project team waited to be told what to do rather than taking ownership of compliance. The new regime places responsibility squarely on those creating the building to demonstrate it meets the required standards. Building control verifies this demonstration through a risk-based approach, applying greater scrutiny where risks are higher or where the demonstration appears inadequate. Let's review this new approach in more detail. The risk-based approach means building control tailors its verification activities according to the risks present and how well compliance is demonstrated. Building control applies greater scrutiny where building complexity is higher, where fire safety or structural risks are more significant, where novel or innovative approaches are proposed that lack established performance, where competence appears inadequate, where there's a history of previous non-compliance, or where documentation is poor or incomplete. Conversely, where risks are lower and compliance is clearly and comprehensively demonstrated, building control applies a proportionate verification approach. This means focused inspections on critical elements rather than exhaustive checking of every detail, and reduced administrative burden on duty holders who demonstrate strong compliance management. The principle is straightforward. Demonstrate compliance early and comprehensively, and building control scrutiny will be proportionate to the actual risk. Fail to demonstrate or demonstrate poorly, and scrutiny increases. This creates a positive incentive for duty holders to invest in clear documentation and proactive compliance demonstration. It's important to understand that this isn't building control being subjective or making judgments about you personally. It's a systematic, professional approach to allocating verification resources where they're most needed to ensure building safety. The better you demonstrate compliance, the more efficiently the building control process operates for everyone. The Building Safety Act introduced a two-tier registration system that fundamentally changed how building control operates. First, we have registered building control approvers, organisations like Socotec Building Control that are registered with the Building Safety Regulator to provide building control services. This replaced the previous approved inspector designation. RBCAs must meet stringent requirements regarding competence, insurance, systems and processes. They operate alongside local authority building control, providing an alternative route for building control services on all building types except higher risk buildings, where the Building Safety Regulator provides direct oversight. Second, at the individual level, we have registered building inspectors. These are the professionals who actually carry out building control work, whether employed by RBCAs or by local authorities. Individual registration is mandatory. You cannot undertake building control activities unless you're a registered building inspector. And only registered approvers and local authorities can undertake building control functions, other than for HRBs. Registration as an RBI requires meeting competence requirements set by the BSR, including qualifications, experience, and demonstrated capability. Registration is not a one-time event. It's subject to ongoing competence assessment, continuing professional development requirements, and can be suspended or revoked if standards are not maintained. This dual registration system ensures accountability at both organisational and individual levels, addressing one of the key failings identified in the Hackett Review: inadequate competence across the building control sector. Let's now touch on some common challenges specific to non-HRB projects and their solutions. Tight timescales are perhaps the most frequent issue. The solution is early building control appointment and realistic programming that allows adequate time for compliance demonstration and verification. Building control cannot verify compliance that hasn't been adequately demonstrated simply because you're in a hurry. Budget constraints are inevitable on many projects. The solution is value specification, not value reduction, and demonstrating compliance clearly through good documentation so building control can verify efficiently. Design changes occur on almost every project. However, duty holders should ensure they have suitable processes to formally review and control any design changes, particularly those that occur during the construction phase. Whilst this can be discussed heavily by the project team, duty holders should ensure building control are notified of these changes, ensuring suitable demonstration of compliance. Complex regulations can be overwhelming. Bring in specialists' input for specialist aspects, and appoint building control early enough that they understand your project's compliance approach. Demonstrating compliance effectively requires robust documentation and strong quality assurance processes proportionate to the size and complexity of the project. These should not be viewed as optional extras, but as fundamental requirements. Coordination issues between duty holders are best addressed through clear duty holder appointments with defined responsibilities and regular communication between all parties. For projects involving existing buildings, such as refurbishments, fit-outs, change of use, extensions, detailed surveys to understand existing construction, and a pragmatic approach working with building control to demonstrate proportionate compliance solutions achieves better outcomes, rather than ignoring existing conditions or assuming non-compliance can be hidden or simply ignored. Remember, the fundamental shift is that you demonstrate compliance. Building control verifies. Make demonstration your priority and verification becomes straightforward. One of the reminders for duty holders is the need to appoint building control much earlier than they may have done in previous projects. Building control must be appointed before building work starts, and risk can be mitigated where the appointment is made before design work is fully concluded. Why is early appointment so critical? Because building control oversees the process of design and construction, and leaving it until the final design is ready could result in delays, as sufficient time will be needed to review the design. Whilst designers should not rely on building control to tell them the design is compliant, engaging with building control to demonstrate the approach to compliance can give sufficient reassurance and make the verification process easier for the registered building inspector allocated to the project if they have an understanding of the design steps taken throughout the project. The risk-based approach requires building control to understand how designs have developed and how compliance is being demonstrated throughout the project, not just at the point of submission. Early appointment provides the opportunity to identify potential compliance issues when solutions are easier and less costly. Documentation and information requirements can be established at the outset, ensuring duty holders know what demonstration of compliance will be expected. Inspection strategies can be planned appropriately based on the project's risk profile. Conversely, late appointment of building control creates a rushed process. Building control lacks the context of design development, leading to a more cautious risk-based approach because they don't have the full picture. Duty holders may face time pressure to provide documentation that should have been developed progressively or are expected to change designs that are significantly progressed. Late appointment essentially signals higher risk to building control, which often results in greater scrutiny. Early appointment demonstrates professional project management and facilitates a smoother, more efficient building control process. This isn't about seeking advice on how to comply. It's about building control, understanding your project early enough to oversee it effectively and apply appropriate, proportionate verification. Effective engagement with building control requires clear communication throughout the project. Designate a single point of contact. This avoids confusion and ensures continuity. Provide advance notice of inspections so building control can attend at the right time. Nothing frustrates more than arriving on site to find work not ready or already covered up. Respond promptly to building control queries and requests for information. Often, delays at the final stages of a project could have been addressed much earlier in the process. Document all discussions and decisions, not just formal submissions, as this may prove useful information to demonstrate an effective approach to compliance. When issues arise, and they will on most projects, escalate them quickly rather than hoping they'll resolve themselves. Most importantly, proactively provide information demonstrating compliance rather than waiting to be asked. Let me highlight common pitfalls to avoid. Don't assume building control will find all issues. Remember, you must demonstrate compliance. Building control verifies your demonstration. Never cover work before the required inspection. Speak with the registered building inspector. There may be an opportunity for a remote inspection or to reschedule an earlier visit. Don't make unapproved changes without going through the proper process. Most changes will be accepted if they are properly thought through, well documented, and clearly demonstrate compliance, rather than decided in the moment without involving the right people. Always provide requested information or documentation. And don't view building control as confrontational. We're all working towards the same goal of a safe, compliant building. Building control is not there to catch you out or create obstacles. Under the new regime, building control oversees the process and verifies your demonstration of compliance. Collaboration, transparency, and proactive demonstration of compliance achieve the best outcomes for everyone. So let's look at how you demonstrate compliance in practical terms, starting with documentation. At the design stage, you need coordinated drawings and specifications. Inconsistencies undermine confidence in your demonstration. You need design calculations and assessments supporting your proposed solutions, product and material specifications with evidence of suitability, fire strategies where required, energy calculations, and clear design rationale and philosophies. Building control should not be expected to fill in gaps in your documentation with their assumptions. The design intent and strategy should be clear and supported by sufficient evidence and information. During construction, comprehensive documentation becomes even more critical. You will need to keep a log of your own site inspection records maintained by the principal contractor, material test certificates and product data sheets for all critical elements and components, as-built drawings showing any departures from the approved design, specialist installation certificates for elements like fire doors, fire stopping, or mechanical systems, photographic records of concealed work before it's covered up, and importantly, records of any non-conformance and how this was resolved. This documentation informs your demonstration of compliance. The more complex the project, the greater level of documentation required. Remember, the fundamental shift: you demonstrate, building control verifies. If your documentation is comprehensive, clear, and demonstrates compliance effectively, building control's risk-based approach will reflect that through proportionate verification. If documentation is poor, incomplete, or unclear, building control must apply greater scrutiny because you haven't adequately demonstrated compliance. The extended limitation periods mean documentation you create today might be examined many years later. Making comprehensive documentation part of your standard process protects everyone. While documentation forms the foundation of compliance demonstration, it must be supported by robust quality assurance processes. Effective QA includes regular design reviews and coordination checks, catching clashes and inconsistencies before they reach site. For complex elements, independent technical review provides a second pair of expert eyes and demonstrates professional rigor. On site, quality control plans and checklists ensure consistent standards. Inspection and test plans ensure verification occurs at the right points in the construction sequence. Subcontractor management and verification processes ensure quality isn't just assumed, but checked. Change control procedures ensure modifications are properly assessed and approved. And critically, learning from defects and near misses treated as opportunities for improvement rather than embarrassments to be hidden. From building controls perspective, when we see strong quality assurance processes, we have confidence that compliance is being actively managed and demonstrated, not hoped for. This confidence directly influences the risk-based approach, where duty holders demonstrate effective compliance management through robust QA. Building control can apply proportionate verification focused on key risk areas. Conversely, when QA is weak or absent, building control lacks confidence in the demonstration of compliance and must compensate through more intensive scrutiny. Strong QA processes are not an additional burden, they're an investment in demonstrating compliance effectively and facilitating efficient building control oversight. The golden thread concept, while most rigorously applied to higher risk buildings, has important implications for non-HRBs. At its core, it's the principle that complete, accurate, and up-to-date information about a building must be maintained from initial design through construction and into occupation, and must be accessible to the building owner for future maintenance, development, and compliance. For non-HRBs, the requirements are less prescriptive than for HRBs, but the principles remain important. Building owners need accurate information to manage their buildings safely and compliantly. Increasingly, building control bodies expect and encourage digital record keeping even on non-HRBs, as it benefits understanding for future development projects. Comprehensive information also forms part of demonstrating compliance, showing you know what was built and can evidence it meets requirements. Practically, this means maintaining as-built drawings and specifications, product information and certificates, inspection records and test results, and operation and maintenance information. This must be handed over to the building owner at completion in an accessible, usable format, not just a box of random documents. The golden thread isn't just a regulatory burden, it's valuable risk management. If issues arise years later, comprehensive documentation can demonstrate that you complied at the time. The extended limitation periods mean this protection extends for up to 15 years. Conversely, the absence of documentation creates a presumption that compliance may have been inadequate. Making information management part of your standard process protects everyone involved in the project. As we conclude, let's briefly recap on some of the key messages discussed today. Let me summarize the key messages from today's session. First, Grenfell changed everything, including the regulatory landscape for non-HRB projects. We cannot return to the old ways of working. Second, building control's role has fundamentally evolved from providing approval and advice to overseeing the process and verifying duty holders' demonstration of compliance. Duty holders must now demonstrate compliance proactively, clearly, and comprehensively. This is the heart of the new regime. Early building control appointment is critical, before design work is concluded and well in advance of work starting on site. This facilitates effective oversight of the process. The registration of registered building control approvers and registered building inspectors, and the introduction of the 2024 regulations means building control is now more robustly regulated, with both organisations and individuals accountable to the BSR. Competence is duty holder responsibility. Ensure it through verification and evidence. Don't simply assume it. Building control is not there to assess competence routinely, but apparent lack of competence will trigger heightened scrutiny and challenge. Documentation is your demonstration of compliance. The Golden Thread principles protect you against future claims under extended limitation periods. The risk-based approach rewards clear, comprehensive demonstration with proportionate verification. Demonstrate well, and building control oversight is efficient and focused. Finally, for non-HRB projects specifically, the principles of the new regime fully apply even though requirements are less prescriptive than for HRBs. The fundamental shift, duty holders demonstrate, building control verifies, applies equally to all building work. I'd like to briefly touch on what the future may hold for building control and the wider construction regulatory landscape. As many of you will be aware, there are ongoing discussions within government and the industry about the establishment of a single construction regulator. This concept was recommended in the Hackett Review and has been the subject of continued policy development since then. The recent transition of the Building Safety Regulator to become an independent arm's-length body under MHCLG in January 2026 represents a significant step in this direction. While the exact shape and timing of any unified regulator remains to be confirmed, the direction of travel is clear, toward greater integration of construction-related regulatory functions, enhanced accountability across the sector, and more consistent oversight of competence and compliance. What we can say with certainty is that the fundamental principles we've discussed today, duty holder responsibility, proactive demonstration of compliance, competence verification, and robust documentation will remain central to any future regulatory framework. These aren't temporary requirements, they represent a permanent shift in how the industry approaches building safety and compliance. For duty holders, the best approach is to embrace these principles now. By building strong compliance demonstration practices, maintaining comprehensive documentation, and engaging proactively with building control, you're not just meeting today's requirements, you're preparing for tomorrow's regulatory environment, whatever form it may take. Socotec remains committed to staying at the forefront of these developments, ensuring our services and expertise evolve to meet both current requirements and future regulatory changes. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I hope you found it informative and useful. The regulatory landscape has changed significantly, but with the right approach, early building control appointment, clear and proactive demonstration of compliance, robust documentation, and collaborative engagement, you can navigate these changes successfully and deliver safe, compliant buildings efficiently. If you have specific follow-up questions to this webinar, my contact details are on screen. Feel free to contact me. Alternatively, if you would like to discuss how Socotec Building Control can support your specific projects, please make contact with your local office or by calling or using the website to be directed to the right person. Remember, as a registered building control approver regulated by the BSR, with registered building inspectors employed throughout our organisation, Socotec Building Control brings professional expertise and accountability to the building control process nationwide. If you are interested in any other services Socotec provide outside of building control, please visit socotec.co.uk. Now we open the floor for your questions, and we welcome questions on the building control process and the topics covered in today's webinar, or Socotec Building Control services and support.